So today I wanted to discuss a little bit about the devotees, the Hare Krishna devotees, dying prematurely or suffering from chronic illnesses prematurely. And there seems to be a bit of an epidemic of that going on in the Hare Krishna community. There's been a sort of an epidemic of devotees getting cancer and other fatal ailments, which shouldn't be going on, especially because Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Hare Krishna religion, said his devotees would not suffer from cancer. He specifically said they would not suffer from cancer. So if there's a lot of devotees getting cancer, then something is wrong, which means they're not following his process properly, rather self-evidently. Now, I have a nurse friend, and she's a Mormon, but she watches my website. I'm good friends with her husband, and that's how she got involved with what I'm doing. She kind of listens with interest with the things that I'm talking about. She reads my blog, and she's a nurse, and she's worked with terminal patients, and she's very experienced. She's like 45 years experience as a nurse, so she really knows what she's doing. Anyway, she thinks there is definitely a cancer epidemic problem going on because she reads my Fund Me. I post all these Fund Me episodes for devotees who are sick, terminally ill, and almost every time it is cancer, something like cancer, that's taking their life early. Many of these devotees are not even 60, not 65, and she says many of her patients at least live to 70, 75, 80 before they have a terminal illness type problem, generally speaking. So she thinks the devotees are dying earlier than the regular population. Very convinced of that. Plus there's many examples of younger devotees who are only in their late 30s, early 40s, who are getting cancer. And that shouldn't be going on. And there are even recent examples of some young lady devotees going in for surgery for a cancer. So they're younger ladies. And some of even the original Prabhupada devotees died of cancer. One Prabhupada devotee was kicked out of her service of being a pujari in Berkeley. This is way back in 1986, and she told me she lost her will to live. And 1 year later, I was at her hospital bedside, and she was dying. She had terminal cancer. So I believe she checked out somewhat intentionally. She just didn't want to be here anymore, and so her body reacted by giving her cancer. So I think this has happened in other cases. There was a very famous Sankirtan lady. She was a mother. She has, I think, maybe 4 children. And she was in her late 40s, I would say. And she died of cancer. She went to Vrindavan, died of cancer. Buddhi Manta told me he could no longer preach. He didn't want to invite people to the Krishna religion anymore. He got cancer. He married the ex-wife of a Krishna guru, and she died supposedly of alcohol, toxic alcohol condition. I had a good friend. He died of toxic alcohol poisoning. He literally drank himself to death. So that's not normal. People aren't normally dying of these kinds of things on a repeated basis, on a regular basis. That's just not normal. Even in the normal society, there's a small percentage of people dying of toxic alcohol and dying at a younger age, say 60 or less than 60, dying of cancer. It happens, but not at the percentage that we have in the devotee community. So I don't know the exact percentage, but I know it's a lot. It's got to be a lot, because so many devotees have departed. So many of the so-called senior devotees, and even a number of the second-generation devotees have departed early, and some of the second-generation just committed suicide. There was somewhat of an epidemic of suicides amongst that class of devotees, and there was a drug problem and just kind of an out-of-control lifestyle among that second-generation group. They just committed, let's say, bad habits which were not good for their health overall. So there's been, just in general, a health crisis, let's say, and a cancer epidemic would be part of that, and taking intoxicants would be another part of that. And there was one very nice lady, a senior Prabhupada devotee, very, very friendly with me. Whenever she would see me, she would clasp her hands together like a praying type thing. She would bow over a little bit. Very respectful, very kind, very nice person. And she died of heroin overdose. And she was in a house where the other devotees were also taking heroin, I think, evidently, because this was a group. You know, they would meet together. She would meet with those people. I think they were taking drugs. And when I was in LA, there was a pot problem going on amongst many devotees, and there was a pot house around the corner from the temple. By that I mean someone in the house was selling pot. So and the devotees would go there and buy pot. So pot is not good for your health. But also, why are devotees drinking and taking pot and taking intoxicants? I think because there's another problem, and that is a psychological problem. I think that these ailments and these drug problems and many other problems are because of a psychological cause. The devotees as a class are depressed. Now, one thing that devotees seem to have as a psychological issue is many times they'll tell me, well, Pranjan, why didn't Krishna fix this? Why didn't Krishna fix that? Why is Krishna allowing this? Well, all right, maybe Krishna's not doing his job, but the first person that has to do the job is us. That's one thing a lot of devotees don't seem to realize. Many, many times devotees would tell me, well, Pranjan, you're just getting into a tailspin over nothing. I mean, Krishna's going to not allow this. Krishna's going to fix this. I mean, don't you have faith in Krishna? Well, maybe, but I think a lot of devotees have misunderstood one of the important principles of Krishna consciousness, and that is that you are supposed to be cleaning up your church. If there's dirt in the Gundicha Mandir, you shouldn't be waiting for Lord Chaitanya to come and clean the Gundicha Mandir. It's up to you to take action to do something about that situation. So I think a lot of devotees are waiting around and just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for Krishna to come and take over cleaning the temple. Meanwhile, the temple is getting more and more dirty and more problems. So I think devotees, this is part of their reason for depression. They've misunderstood one of the important principles of the Krishna religion, which is that you are supposed to be doing something about the problems going on in your religion. So if there is, for example, child molesting going on, and there's many cases of this, maybe thousands of cases, and the parents are not going to the police, and the parents aren't alerting the other parents, then Krishna is not causing the problem in that situation. The problem is being caused by the, let's say, over-tolerant nature of these devotees. They're just tolerating all kinds of nonsense, not taking action to fix it, and the problem just gets worse and worse and worse. And then they get more and more depressed because the problem is getting worse and worse. So that causes depression. But the root of this depression is they've misunderstood the principle that you are supposed to be serving Krishna. You're not supposed to be sitting around tolerating all kinds of bad behavior, like Arjuna was being told by Krishna, do not tolerate all this nonsense. You have to take action. You have to fix it. I'm not going to fix it. That's what Krishna's telling Arjuna. It's up to you to fix these, because that's the test. Krishna wants to see, are you going to fix this? Or are you going to just sit around and make him your servant? Now, I had a funny example in my own life, or actually many examples like this, but a devotee was telling me, oh, Pranjan, you have no faith in Krishna, what's wrong with you? And just at that time, his child came running into the apartment. It was an upstairs apartment, and the child had a big blob of dog manure on his shoe, stuck on his shoe, and he was tracking it on the carpet. And so this man started screaming at the child, "Get out of here!" And I said, wait a minute. You mean you don't have faith that Krishna will come here with his carpet cleaning truck and fix your carpet? You know. And I had another incident with similar-minded devotee. He said I had no faith in Krishna. We were riding in a car in the rain, going by Berkeley, and all of a sudden his front tire went flat. He pulled over and he was swearing and cursing and he was angry. And I says, well, Prabhu, what's the problem? You know, just sit here. Krishna's going to come here and fix your tire. Don't worry about it. So I think there's a lot of reasons for this, you know, psychological, depression or unrealistic expectations, let's say, that many devotees have. And that's causing a lot of problems. And because of that, they become depressed, and then their body reacts by, you know, if you're mentally depressed, then the cells in your body become depressed. And that means your immune system goes down, and it can lead to disease. And I know many cases, but there was one woman I knew, she was very depressed, and she would actually start drinking alcohol from time to time, and then she would crash up her car and go out and get a speeding ticket, and then she would get even more depressed because by drinking she just compounded the problems like that. So this is unfortunate that there's a number of devotees caught in this kind of what I would call a doom cycle. Things just get worse and worse and worse. But, the rank and file devotees, of course, are less responsible for this situation. They're more like victims of this situation, I would say. But many of the leaders are, in a similar condition. They, like Hansaduta, he was drinking vodka, taking Percodons, he had headaches all the time, he was very depressed, and he's the leader. So if the leader is depressed, and people are worshiping that, then they become impacted. You become what you worship. So if you're worshiping a depressed person, or let's say a psychologically deranged person, then that will lead to potentially you, following in that pattern, because you become what you worship. And Jayapataka has a horrible health situation. Satsarup had all kinds of headaches, and some of these gurus have reported being constipated and having this ailment and that ailment and heart palpitations and all kinds of different things. So the leaders are also having these, let's say, health crisis problems, and it's for the same reason. It's psychological. They're not doing the right things. And that is creating a mental incapacitation in their system, which is leading to bad health and bad habits and bad results, a bad outcome. So this compounds the problem. If the leaders are, let's say, leading the psychological problem situation in a society, then the whole society will be impacted in different ways. I believe that. And I see that, practically. The leaders are getting headaches and they're falling down and having problems, and sometimes they're drinking and taking intoxication, or they're falling into pornography, and so many bad behaviors because they're depressed and they're fried and they're upset and they're not happy people. Now, Prabhupada says Krishna consciousness is joyfully performed. So if there's no joy, or it's worse than no joy, there's depression and upsetting situations going on, then people are wondering, does this process work? Is there really a Krishna? And I've seen that too. The different devotees who just lost faith in the whole process, lost faith in Krishna. But I think that what they don't realize is that life itself, our entire life, is a test. It's a test from Krishna. Krishna's wanting to see, okay, if this obstacle comes along, are you going to lose faith in me? And it's kind of like, the parable of Jesus walking on water. He could walk on the water. The disciples could walk on water, but only if they kept, their vision on Jesus. As soon as they looked down or looked away, they fell through the water. So it's a similar type thing, I believe. Krishna tests everyone. Are you going to be, keeping your vision on me, or are you going to be affected by all these situations? And if you're affected by all these situations, you're going to be less effective in dealing with the problem. You're going to have a worse capability of solving the problem if you yourself are part of the problem, or you're experiencing all of the problems that are going on. So you have to be, psychologically removed, or psychologically independent from that. And that really is the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna, just completely detach yourself from the situation and just do your job, do your duty. And I believe many devotees did not do their duty. They didn't even know what their duty was. And they failed. They failed to do the job. The job was, you have to protest. You have to go to the police if you know about crimes or molesting or different problems going on. But crimes were going on left, right, and center all over the place. No one was calling the police. No one was alerting the other devotees there's a problem. And even a so-called great devotee like Gaur Govinda, there's a female who was a victim starting when she was a very young age. She said she reported this to Gaur Govinda. And he just said, there's nothing I can do. You have to just wait until your next life. Try to go back to Vaikuntha. Don't worry about it. Okay, he's not going to fix the problem. And that just makes the problem worse, especially for this victim, who really had a horrific situation going on. So we're just tolerating these problems and tolerating these problems. Meanwhile, there's all kinds of victims. As the victims accumulate, it's like a snowballing effect. There's more, as there's more allowing of victimization, there's more victims. And then the bigger pile of victims means more people are protesting and causing trouble for ISKCON and the Hare Krishna religion. And then that brings everyone else, down psychologically, because it's just a snowballing, ongoing, that's why I call it a doom cycle. It just goes down and down and down. The more the problems are tolerated, the more that the problems will accumulate, and the worse those problems will get, which is what's happened, I believe, in the Krishna religion. Now, I was interviewed by some, let's say, mundane media people, and they said, it seems to us that the people who built up the religion, all the senior devotees, did all this work building up the Hare Krishna religion, and those same senior people are the people responsible for dismantling the religion. It looks like they just tore the religion up into shreds because they did not follow the orders of the guru of the religion, obviously. They were following at one point, everything was going along, more or less, but when everybody stopped following, then, the doom cycle started, and they noticed that as well. There's like a doom cycle. Things are just getting from bad to worse. and there's no resolution. And there's no resolution because, people didn't understand. They didn't understand what is the problem, how to fix the problem, or even, they don't even realize there is a problem. They think the problem is that Krishna is not fixing everything. That's not the problem. You are the problem, because you are supposed to be fixing these situations. You're not supposed to be tolerating and allowing all this to go on. But anyway, so I think there is a kind of a doom cycle going on with many devotees. They allowed and tolerated so many nonsense things to take over the religion, and then later on they realized, wow, this is a mess, and then they became depressed, and that affected their well-being and their health and their longevity, and so on and so forth. And Prabhupada says that if devotees commit offenses, or they allow offenses to be committed, they will lose their longevity. They will lose their reputation, their longevity, and so many things, so many benefits. And we see that happening. They're losing their longevity. They're losing their reputation. The devotees have a very bad reputation, and it's because they have allowed offenses. And so even if they weren't committing the offenses, of course many of them were committing the offenses. Many of them were participating in the offensive situation. They were supporting the false gurus. They were supporting the child molesting regime. They were supporting changing the books. They were supporting worshiping illicit sex deviants. And for sure, that's going to impact them, psychologically, physically, and every other way. There will be a reaction. Everything, for every action, there's a reaction. And if the action is to create trouble for other people or create trouble for ISKCON, then you will have a reaction, and the reaction will be trouble for you. So anyway, this is just kind of a brief overview of the situation. It's a lot more complex. There's many, many layers and layers and layers of complexity to the situation. I realize that. I'm not trying to oversimplify it, hopefully, but I do believe that there are certain root causes for all of these kinds of problems. And now I just heard some young people are getting cancer, the so-called Gurukulis. Some of them committed suicide. So there's a problem with these people. They shouldn't be having these major health crises at this stage of their life. Something's wrong. And it's just like Alcoholics Anonymous. If you don't know there's a problem, you can't solve the problem. If you don't know you're a drunk, you can't cure being a drunk. So I think until the Hare Krishna religion really comes to grips with what happened and how it happened, the problem will not be solved. Now there's lots of devotees who are preaching some therapy. We need therapy for all of these traumas and all that kind of stuff. And there's devotees who are specializing in trauma therapy. Well, wait a minute. How did all this trauma happen? That's what you got to ask, first of all. Who caused this trauma? How did this develop in the first place? You can't cure the trauma unless you identify the root cause. And I believe the root cause is the leaders deviated, and everybody, or most everybody, tolerated, and that created this downward spiral, a death spiral. You can only get out of the death spiral if you really put a lot of power on your airplane now, because your airplane is in a tailspin and it's going down, down, down. So it's going to take, in other words, a lot of extra effort to extricate the Hare Krishna religion from this situation. I really believe that. And I believe the solution is very simple. We've got to get back to square one, do what Prabhupada wanted, follow his instructions, do not allow bogus people to take over your religion, and do not allow bogus people to be worshipped, and do not allow the people who orchestrate mass problems and mass child molesting and mass embezzling and just mass destruction and mass dismantling of your religion. Do not allow those people to continue doing that. At least protest. At least do try to fix the situation. And if you don't, then I believe you'll be implicated, and physically, mentally, and every other way you'll be impacted by the downward spiral. So I hope this helps. Haribo.